I am here this afternoon with Carla Tantillo Philibert, and I am super excited because she is going to be joining our jam-packed lineup at our 2017 SAI Fall Conference, Make It Happen. So welcome, Carla.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to see you all in August.
And we are excited to have you here. A couple of quick questions. The first question is, what is it that makes you so passionate about the topic of social emotional learning and then mindfulness as a strategy within that learning process?
Wow, thank you, Dana. That is such a good question. I would say it started when I was in the classroom. So I was a classroom teacher working in a high needs area of Chicago. And I remember that there was a gang shooting over the weekend. And I got to school that Monday and I had prepared this amazing haiku poetry lesson, spent hours on Sunday prepping it, aligning it to the standards. And my students weren't present and they weren't focused. And when I asked one of my students, I was like, Letizia, what's going on? And she said, well, there was a gang shooting, Miss T. Marcos got shot. And I was stunned in that moment, stunned by kind of the gravitas of the situation. And I was also stunned at my inability to meet my students' needs in that moment. I was a fifth-year teacher. I probably should have had some tools in my tool belt. And I was like, all right, let's do a double entry journal on gang violence in our community. Oh, yikes. Fail on my part. Thumbs down, as I'm sure you're all nodding your heads like, really, lady? That's the best you could do? And it occurred to me, you know what? I need to give my students the tools to mitigate life's stressors. I can't combat gang violence in the community, not on my own. I can't put food in my students' bellies. But what I can do and what I could do as an educator is give them the tools, the social emotional learning tools, the mindfulness tools to be present and ready to learn so that cycle of violence or that cycle of generational poverty doesn't continue, right? Because if our students can't be present, then they can't learn. And so our job as educators is to empower them with those tools so they can be present and focus, regardless of the stressors that are outside of the schoolhouse doors.
Wow, I can't even imagine. As I mentioned, I really feel that this topic is such an important topic, not only for our students, but for our teachers and for our administrators as they navigate the stressors in their lives. And so as I think about that, help us understand, what would a K-12 principal, superintendent, assistant superintendent, any one of our K-12 leaders, what should they expect to take away, learn, understand better as a result of attending your thought leader session at our conference this fall?
Oh gosh, another great question. Thank you so much. So I went on from being that classroom teacher who was kind of, I don't know what to do, to being the curriculum director of the school and kind of an administrator, assistant principal role, then founding Mindful Practices in 2006, which is my organization, and now working with administrators and school leaders across the country to help develop a cohesive social emotional learning and mindfulness approach. Now notice here, I don't say program. Right? If participants, and I hope you all do, come to my session, I'm not gonna, be like, okay, now buy this shiny kit for $500. No, that's not the point. What we do is we dig in. We look at the sparkly things that you're already doing in your district. Maybe you've adopted social emotional learning standards. Maybe there is something here that you say, hey, my teacher's doing this. It sounds like social emotional learning. It feels like social emotional learning, but she's just not calling it that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a grassroots assessment of where you are, and then we're going to help create common language in your district around this work. Because what we want is, we want our students to be empowered with the tools, but we don't want them to have to decode what's happening from classroom to classroom to classroom, right? So it's that fabulous mix of honoring teacher autonomy with the work, but then also saying, as a school or as a district, we need to develop common language around the work. Because common language empowers our students to be present and focused, and it empowers our teachers so they can see the social emotional learning, they can see that mindfulness journey ahead. And also, of course, that magic word, impact, right? If you come to my session, what we'll be able to do together is say, all right, how do we measure the impact of this work? Now, that's going to probably be different from your school to your school to your school, but that is an important thing for us to know. right? What are we shooting for? It's one of those things. I know when I would do teacher evaluations, I would often say, this teacher's got it and this teacher not so much, but I can't put my finger on it, right? And so what we're going to do is say, hey, what does effective social emotional learning and mindfulness practices look like in your classrooms, in your schools? How can we create common language around that work, right? Codify it so it makes sense to students, makes sense to teachers, and then also as school leaders, how do we evaluate impact?
Awesome. I think that will really, really resonate. And I'm anticipating that some of those strategies that are relevant for our students are also relevant for us as adults to help us be less stressed and have that kind of impact that we want to have.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Dana, thank you so much for bringing that up because it really starts with teacher competency, right? If I were, assigned, let's say, a music class to teach, well, my certs in history and English, and now you're asking me to teach violin, I can't do that. And I don't know, some of us, but in my case, when I became certified to teach, there were really no social emotional learning standards. And then I was expected to teach them. Yikes, I've never been trained, right? And we will talk about that. We'll talk about that efficacy piece, and then we'll also talk about the oh so important teacher self-care piece. We want our teachers to be present. We want them to be ready to teach, right? That's such an important piece. And sometimes they're experiencing compassion fatigue. I call it the woe is me syndrome sometimes, So what we want to do is we want to move them out of that place to a place where they can be present for our students.
I love it. I love your energy and enthusiasm, and I can't wait for August to get here. I don't like to wish time away, but I really think that this will be a great session for our leaders, and it fits in with a number of other things that we're considering as well with our own leadership life fit and how do we reduce our own stressors and then support our staff so that we can all be in service, our best service of the students whom we're hired to support and whom we have a passion for loving and supporting. So this is awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm excited to see you all in August.